Hello again everybody. Now today I thought we could have a quick look at the 881 power scope. Well, hopefully some of you are going to have watched my video that featured me trying to tidy up my room and making a dismal job of it as usual, just getting distracted and playing with all my wonderful electronic toys. And you will remember that I plugged in this 881 power scope just to have a quick look at it and have a play with it. And in the process of playing with it, it let out the magic smoke. Given the amount of smoke or how badly it smells in this room now, it's not me farting for once, I definitely thought we were going to find something pretty nasty and burnt and charred. Now, we had a quick look at it on the day. We took the covers off and I poked it with a stick, but there was nothing particularly obvious about what went wrong. Now, it was perfectly obvious that something inside it had smoked because it filled my room with a really acrid smell, and I did say at the time I think it was probably a tantalum. The first thing I've done today is I've turned the workshop lights up and got my magnifier out, and hopefully you're going to see this little fella here, which is a said tantalum capacitor. Now, it's amazing in vintage equipment, you know, stuff from the 80s and 90s, how often these tantalum capacitors turn out to be the culprits. It's one of them things where if I had a penny for every time I'd replace tantalum capacitors, I'd probably have maybe £2.60 or something like that. But this one is definitely looking like it's a funny colour. I almost wondered if it should have been like that because it almost looks like it's got a brown stripe on top of it. And then the one next to it looks as though it's got a brown stripe on it as well. But I think what has happened is this one has got red hot. It started smoking and the smoke residue has stained the top of this. Well, after fingering that capacitor, it's definitely got the tantalum smell of death about it. So yeah, need to get that out. Now, I don't know if any of you were watching the DefPom channel the other day. He was playing with, I think it was a Keysight power supply, and it had a Duff Opto isolator in it, and he very deftly, I thought, he reached down into the piece of equipment and it was well buried inside, and he managed to unsolder this multi-pinned leggy and sold another one in. And I've got to admit, I was quite impressed with his dexterity. Anyway, 10 out of 10 Scott for that. I was very impressed. Now, for all you mere mortals out there, don't worry about that, because I promise you there'll be absolutely no electrical prowess here tonight. It's going to be down and dirty, which is what you've come to expect from me. Right, solder sucker. Now, me and this solder sucker are actually old adversaries. We've done battle on more than one occasion. The handpiece itself is actually, I think, quite well made. It's quite good. But the vacuum pump is, yeah, just totally feeble. It has all the sucking power of an asthmatic with a straw. Whenever I do this, it always reminds me of the umbrella story at school. Yeah, I'm probably not going to say any more than that, but some people of a certain age and any sailors out there will probably know what I'm referring to. But yeah, was that real, or was that just some kind of urban myth? It certainly filled me with terror. I'm afraid you're only going to succeed in getting a picture of my head. Oh, sorry about that. Oh, actually, got it out. And there's the naughty little tantalum capacitor. Looks like he's been out sunbathing too long, doesn't he? It's all a bit burnt. Ta-da! And we have traces. Time base. Yeah. Is that going to move left to right? Where do you do it on here? There we go. Yeah, that's moving. Okay, so we're fixed. I don't need to do any more. It is now working. That, of course, does leave us with a bit of a dilemma. Now, there's a couple of ways we could tackle this. What some people would do is go through the oscilloscope and replace all these tantalum capacitors, because if you get one bad tantalum, chances are that you'll have many others that are bad as well.
It's the only way to be sure.
The other thing that you should do is, just as a matter of course, and I guess I will do that, you should check the ripple voltage on the supplies, because one of the major causes of failure is of tantalums is ripple voltage. But people always say that, and it is of course true, but the other reason that they fail is because they're now 30 years old and probably they're long past their design life. So the correct way to do it is actually to go through this one board at a time, take out all these tantalum capacitors and replace them. Now of course the other technique which I plan to employ today is basically just put the lid back on it and flog it on eBay, because I don't like this scope much anyway. Bye bye. Now I'm just wondering what rail it was that that capacitor took down, so let's just put the power on again and just double check that. Alright, okay, so that's 12 volts, but just looking at the way that it's laid out, I can see that the plus side of the capacitor is actually going to the ground plane on the circuit board. So that must be the minus 12 volt rail, which is actually a little bit low, so we might tweak that up maybe. If I can find the adjustment for that. I think there might be an adjustment for the minus 12 volt rail. Well, I've just been fingering my way through this dubious collection of tantalum capacitors, and I have got some that are at 16 volts, 10 microfarads, which is what I've just found. And I had to check them on my Peak Atlas LCR meter because a bit hard to read some of the labels on them, they seem pretty smudged. Anyway, I've checked them, they are 10 microfarad. So I think we'll swap both of them out. We'll swap the one out that's actually duff, and we'll swap the one out next to it, because that seems like the best chance of success, because the part that was next to it, which is smoke damaged, I'm guessing it saw some heat as well, so it just seems like a good idea while I'm in there to change them both out. But I'm not going to change them all out. I would have liked to have put some high voltage ones in, maybe 35 volts or something like that, but I've run out of 35 volt ones in that range, so it's going to have to go with 16 volts, and that's what it had in it originally. Just looking around this scope, there's quite a lot of little gimmick wires, and yeah, that's a little bit unusual. I'm kind of wondering if they maybe had problems with parasitic oscillation in somewhere they shouldn't have done. I mean, nothing wrong with the odd gimmick wire, but this thing seems to be full of them. You know what, I wish I hadn't wanged that capacitor across the workshop now. It would have just been quite interesting to check the resistance of it, because I would have thought it's got a dead short. So here's one that I've just pulled out, it's neighbour. And it's actually the same brand as I'm going to replace it with, so yeah, so we're going to put about the same age and vintage of capacitor back as has come out of it, so yeah, that was worthwhile, wasn't it? Right, okay, is that positive? Thinks it's 11 microfarads. Could be within the range. I seem to think that don't tantalums tend to go a little bit higher as they age, or is that electrolytics? Maybe that's electrolytics. Yeah, it is electrolytics, isn't it? I'm talking rubbish. Yeah, that's about the same actually, 10.7. Okay, so we've got some new ones. I did that old one. Let's go rummaging around. I'm going to rummage through the undergrowth, David Bellamy style. Does anyone remember old David Bellamy? The old bearded chinmeister. I did wang it across the room, didn't I? It's not on the bench, is it? These look as though they're on a, I don't know, 5mm lead pitch. Maybe they are. These are a bit more modern, maybe. Don't know. Nothing that a pair of long nose pincers can't sort out. Right. Positive, better get that right, haven't we? So positive is going on that side. Come on. Okay, that'll probably do it. I might just touch you up on the other side. Yeah, I'm not quite happy the solder's come up through the through plating as it should have done there. I think I only dabbed it loosely, but you can solder it through from the other side, it'll still work. Seems to be very cack-handed today. I think I might have had too much coffee, I've got the shakes. Tip on this solenoid isn't particularly fine. He said, lining up all his excuses. I tend to work on a lot of older equipment, a lot of valve stuff, and I don't really, most of the time, I don't like using a really fine tip. But this is an occasion where it would have helped me. Okay, you'll do. Well, I think while I'm probing away inside the old girl, we might as well just check the power supplies, and I think I've managed to trace the circuit through. It looks as though we've got some regulators down here, and I've chased them back to these two pots here. So we've got, struggling now, my glasses are dirty, RV702 and RV701. So I think RV701 is the plus, 12 volt regulator, and 702 is the minus 12 volt regulator. So if I can locate a pot twiddler, we will just check them. So I just need to find a convenient 12 volt point, which is it's easier said than done on these things actually. Let's try. Okay, so that's saying 12.07 volts, so that's within the spec. Let's check the minus supply, which says 11.7, so our minus supply is a little bit low, and that's the one that got pulled down when that tantalum died. So can we tweak that up a little bit more? Will it go? Okay, bang on, minus 12 volts, so that's good enough. Now I did check the ripple earlier with the scope, and yeah, there's no issues, it's okay. Well, I think we should be okay to put this back together and give it a test. Okay, I've got this protective plastic cover, which I think was just stuffed on under here somewhere. As you can see, it's all very high tech, this. And then there was another plastic cover. Not sure which way around that went. That went like that, crunchy crunch. I'm always a bit cautious handling oscilloscopes, especially ones that have been plugged in recently, because you're never sure, or I'm never completely sure, how long things are going to stay charged up. I think if you leave it half an hour or so, you'll probably be fine, but this one's been about a minute, hasn't it? Is that going down? Or is that getting stuck? Got it the right way around, haven't I? Turn it onto its front. A little bit of an awkward cover this to assemble. Well, I've got to admit, I'm feeling slightly guilty for not changing all those tantalum caps, and I think the logic behind it is that the reality is they probably do need changing. I said earlier, if you get one bad tantalum, the chances are you've got more that are bad as well. But it's only so much time I want to invest in this piece of test gear. I don't particularly love it. It's not something I use very regularly, and I've recently just got hold of a couple of quite nice differential probes, which I'm going to do a review on going forward. So I don't really need it, and I don't love it. You know, some bits of test equipment you kind of fall in love with. Well, I never really liked this scope that much. Although it's fair to say it's an unusual piece of kit. It's about the only differential scope I've ever owned or really seen. There's not a lot of them around. But a bit of a specialist corner case. I'm guessing it'd be useful if you were working on switch mode power supplies and stuff of that nature, three-phase systems. high power systems, motors, motor controllers, it's probably really advantageous to have those differential inputs. But you know, it is a bit of a one-trick pony. I much prefer to have a modern digital scope with all the fancy readouts on it than this old analog one. And I can, if I use a differential input probe, just use a separate probe. Obviously, I've got all the isolation of the differential input probe, but all the features of all the measurements and all the other good stuff on a modern scope. Right, okay. Okay, so we've got our 4 traces. Again, that's quite nice to have a 4-channel scope, isn't it? So let's get them in order. Channel 1, Channel 2, Channel 3, Channel 4. Okay. Oh, we need some probes, don't we? Don't know where the probes are. Real men's oscilloscope probes, them, aren't they? Ah! A little bit loosey-goosey then. So what we set on? Oh, we set on 200 volts. I don't think we're going to get 200 volts, are we? So there's channel 1 working. Let's try channel 2. Oh, I've got that grounded. Don't want it grounded, do we? Okay, that one's working. That's alright, 0.5. And the last channel. And that works as well. Well, here it is. Yeah, the probe for channel 5's a bit different in that it actually has the ground strap on it. The other ones have a separate ground. So there we go. Let's put that in there. And so even channel 5 works. Well, it'd be quite nice to just check out these inputs a little bit further, but unfortunately I haven't got anything like a Ballantine amplitude and time test set. Yeah, I wish I had one of them, eh? Well, I wish I had one that worked.